Version control is a new feature in BricsCAD V22 for all BIM or higher license levels. I am proud to present this new development to all of you by showcasing it on the preliminary design model of the Hexagon PPM Headquarters. So let's dive in by opening BricsCAD in the BIM workspace and going to the version control panel in the model space of a new drawing. When you haven't used the version control panel before, it will appear empty. To use it, we will have to add a working folder on our machine to the panel by clicking the blue plus button. So let's first make a folder on our machine and call it the Hexagon PPM Headquarters Massing, as we will first work on the massing of the Hexagon headquarters. Now let's add the folder to the version control panel so that it becomes a version control folder that we can always access to do version control in. To do this, press the blue plus button and choose the folder we just made. The folder is now a version control project folder that you can use to store files in that we can version. So let's add a file to the folder and see what changes happen in the panel. More specifically, I will now model the massing of the Hexagon PPM headquarters in this new drawing that I have opened before, and will save this drawing in the dedicated folder on my machine. You can see that as soon as I save the drawing appears in the version control panel as a possible commit that you can save to the history log. By the way, commit is a version control term, since this versioning system is based on a version control approach, an approach also known in the programming world. It only stores the changes compared to the previous version. For the CAD world, this results in a unique way for lightweight storing of multiple versions of files and to explore different design variants. If you haven't saved your working drawing yet, however, these changes are not yet picked up by the suggestions for files to commit, as you might want to disregard these changes later anyways. When you do have at least one saved change, and you are ready for a meaningful commit, type in a commit message, so you remember what the version was about or what changed compared to the previous version. So here, let's say we use 1, massing of the headquarters version 1. If we now press commit, you will see that this commit message, with the associated files, is added to the history list of commits, as you were now redirected to this history. When we press the Changes tab once more, we will see again the latest saved changes to our files. So let's repeat the process with a new massing variation. Make the needed changes in your working drawing, save them, and see them appear in the Changes tab. Add a meaningful commit message, and hit the commit button. A new version of the file is added to the history list. However, note that this version control panel does not work as a Save As button that stores a duplicate of the files. Rather, it makes sure you always have only one version of your files in your version control folder on your machine, your work in progress drawings. Other than that, the previous changes alone, and not the entire files, are stored in a hidden folder next to the DWGs you are currently working on. Okay, so having learned the basics, let's switch to an LOD 200 model of the same Hexagon PPM Headquarters and start a fresh version control project. This time we will start with a folder that contains already some files. After adding this folder to the version control panel with the blue plus button, we can see that now we see all files appear in the changes, instead of just one file. This time, you can choose to select or unselect certain files that you want to be saved in the commit. If you unselect files now, for example because you are not happy with them yet, they will pop up once again in the panel after this commit, so you can still choose to include them in the next commit. Now, let's unselect the LOD 200 model that we still want to do some work on before committing. Let's commit the other files already with a meaningful message. And after we see that the commit worked, we work further on the LOD 200 model by modeling some internal rooms. Now I am ready with the changes to the LOD 200 model, so I want to commit. But I forgot to save my file first. Well, no worries. Although the unsafe changes are not directly picked up by the panel, since you still might want to disregard them, if you have such unsafe changes in one of the drawings you are currently working on, and you press commit, you will get an extra pop-up, asking if you want to include these changes anyways. In the pop-up, you will get a selection method with a star that will indicate the files that had unsafe changes before, so you can clearly distinguish them from the ones you deliberately saved before. After you choose which files to commit and you press the commit button, you will be redirected to the history list of commits once again. Let's make another change to the model. For example, making one big curtain wall at the entrance of the building. And add a commit once more. This time, we leave all files included, and once again we see that commit is successful because it appeared in the history list. Now let's dive a bit deeper in the history list and open up one of these old commits. As we know, the files attached to this commit can be seen here, but there is more. If you want to revert to these files of an old commit, it is also possible from here, with the revert button. This reverts the work in progress drawings to the state of a previous commit. A good practice here, if you still want to work further on an older commit, is to first save this commit as reverted to version X, so that you know which version you chose to work further on. The other commits after the one you reverted to will remain in the history log, and you will just see a new commit appeared with the message reverted to version X. As such, you keep your history list tidy and well searchable. So let's revert to a state before the entrance building had a curtain wall, and add an entrance door instead. Next, we make the changes and do the commit. 3 entrance door added. Also good to know when reverting is that if you revert to an older commit, you will lose access to the latest work in progress drawing, as they got overwritten by an older commit. So if you wanted to save that state as well, make sure that you did a new commit just before reverting to an older version. If you're not happy with the file you chose to revert to before you made the revert to version X commit, know that it's always possible to just revert to another commit as well, maybe even to the latest one you made. Finally, for the process of reverting, we ask you to close your working files first, because we are replacing those working files with the version you chose to revert to. So you always have only one set of working files instead of hundreds saved as versions. Now that we already have an LOD 200 model, we might not need the version control project from our mossing model anymore. The cleanest way to delete it is to delete the folder from the version control panel with the right-click delete button in the list of version control folders. However, don't worry if you need it back at some point. As long as you don't delete the hidden folder in your working folder on your machine, you can re-add the working folder just as you did in the beginning of the video for a new project, so by using the blue plus button, and by selecting then the old working folder. BricsCAD will pick up the data once again, and you will see the entire history log of the folder. If you do it the other way around, namely deleting your working folder on your machine, you will of course not be able to restore it from within BricsCAD. You will get an error in the list of version control projects that the working folder is not found. At this point, you can still restore the folder location, for example in the case you just moved the folder somewhere else on your machine, instead of really deleting it, after which the version control project will work as normal once again. Finally, worth mentioning is that at the beginning of a new project you will always see an ignore file being saved to the history log. This file, also in parallel with the programming world, allows you to ignore certain files or file types so that they never come up as suggested files to include in the commits. Standard, we make sure the .dwl and .bak files are ignored in this way, so you don't version control backup files needlessly. So, now that you saw the entire workflow for file version control on our Hexagon PPM headquarters, you are ready to give it a shot. Let us know what you thought. And remember that file version control is available for BricsCAD BIM or higher only. Thanks for listening, and see you next time!